Lawsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello, today on our show, we have Josh Blandi, CEO and co-founder of UniCourt, a SaaS company that uses machine learning to conveniently access, organize, and use court data for valuable legal intelligence. UniCourt provides legal data as a service, mostly for AmLaw 50 firms and Fortune 500 businesses. This cutting-edge software helps these entities to access normalized court data for a wide range of uses, like finding specific cases or briefs, motions, or pleadings. It also helps with business development and competitive intelligence and analytics, among many other things. Gathering competitive intelligence from court data to stay ahead of litigation trends and using that data to keep an eye on competitive law firms is a very interesting topic. It is for me, I'm sure it is for many others. So, Josh, I'm excited to dive into this with you.
Hey, Tanner, thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and thanks again for having me on today.
Absolutely. So let's jump in. This concept is, for those listening, this is an interesting concept when it comes to just harvesting data. Data feels limitless. Seems like it's all around. Court data can be found in PACER, public access to court electronic records, and obviously also state court document systems. But if data is available and public for everyone, how can its use be a differentiating factor for a law firm today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just a little bit of background. PACER is a system that's reserved for just the federal courts, and it's probably the most advanced. It was one of the original systems developed for accessing court records back in the late 80s, early 90s, and is definitely kind of the leader. But imagine we have, say 18,000 plus courts, including administrative courts in the United States, right? And some of these are online and somewhat accessible, and lots of these aren't, especially for kind of underserved communities like rural areas or smart counties. Even if they're publicly available or online, it doesn't necessarily mean they're easily accessible, searchable, or useful. And that's primarily because every court does things differently, kind of has its own nomenclature and data structure, which ultimately has to be kind of normalized. And imagine now you have 18,000 courts and every system operates independent of the other systems, right? So it's very siloed and fractured, right? So what we essentially do is we aggregate this data through our platform across all the federal courts, all the PACER courts, and kind of an ever-growing list of state courts. I think we're over 1,200 or 1,400 different courts in the United States. Typically the bigger ones, and we normalize this data, which basically means using machine learning, we classify different types of different data objects or data points. So, for example, a type of case would be something we classify or a status, right, or a cause of action, right. We also do a lot of normalization on entities involved in litigation, which I think is particularly important for that kind of business development aspect of it. Taking a attorney or law firm or a corporate business, right, and accounting for all the variations that you see in their name, not only within a court system, but across court systems, and now tying them to that kind of real world entity, right? So then you can aggregate, all the cases they've been involved in, what types of cases they've been involved in, where have they been involved. And I think that's kind of the main point is, courts do what they do best, which is administration of justice, right? But they do a kind of a not such a great job at, they're not data companies, and so that's kind of where we come in.
It makes a lot of sense. In my world, in the digital world at least, I can relate to, there are some websites out there that have a ton of useful content, a lot of useful content. The challenge is that very few people are finding it and in search, and the biggest reason is because Google can't find it. And the site is so disorganized and unable to essentially make it easy for a user to navigate to the most appropriate page. And in turn, you have all this information that's not being seen. It's the same concept that you all have come in and helped essentially restructure and provide that data in an easy to use way. And I think that that's a powerful tool And so I'd ask you, going beyond that, I appreciate your explanation. It's great for the users. It's great for me as well. And taking that a step further, what are some other areas that law firms are using data ultimately to be a differentiator, to be used as a differentiator, or to be used as a competitive advantage?
One of the things we do with our data, after we kind of collect it, structure and organize it, is our main offering is making this data available through APIs. So there's kind of one standard set of APIs that firms can plug into to pipe structured court data out into their infrastructure. And I think that's where you kind of get this, 1 + 2 = 5 scenario, right? Where firms have very valuable data, client data sitting on their side, right? And by itself, it's valuable, but when mixed with a larger data set, which is the overall, court record data set, now you can drive some pretty profound intelligence. Like, for example, you can see, hey, given your client, right, how much litigation they involved in, where is this litigation taking place? Who's doing this litigation? Where do we fit in that picture as a firm? Benchmarking to other firms. What type of litigation are our clients involved in? And from there, you can develop a strategy for your clients to say, hey, we can do this more efficiently, or we can take on more areas for you to drive down efficiency for corporates. So those are kind of some of the ways that we see firms using it. Another big use case is kind of the entity tracking aspect of that, which is, firms will upload a list or give us a list of, or we'll actually in some cases provide it to them because we have a more comprehensive set of records from the courts themselves of, all the clients they've represented, say, over the last 5 or 10 years, right? And we'll create these searches that basically automate whenever one of their clients or potential clients is involved in new litigation. They can get alerted and access to that docket in case to kind of be the first to see it if they're not representing on it. And maybe they can add some valuable input and talking points for their clients to win future business.
And so you've used the term business development, and are you connecting the two there? That data ultimately helps lead toward attracting more relevant cases? I guess I'm struggling making that connection.
In this case, it would be more alerting a firm and an attorney that owns that relationship at a firm when their client is involved in new litigation. One of the Jeff, who runs our publishing, came from Citigroup, right? And Citigroup, I had over 2,000 different firms. And imagine now, like Citigroup, someone like Citigroup has all these different firms that represent them on all these different types of matters, and there's a lot of overlap between firms. Meaning, today it went with firm A, and tomorrow it goes with firm B, but they still give firm A some other business or the same type of business, but they just don't give them all of the business, right? And so this is a way for firms now to kind of drill into seeing, hey, Citigroup, how much litigation is taking place? Where do we fit in that picture, right? I want to know when Citigroup's involved in new litigation so we can continue to drip on them and show value.
That's good. Very helpful. And I want to come back to something too. You mentioned, just for clarity for the audience, you mentioned the infrastructure, basically how your platform drives the data back into the law firm's infrastructure. Can you give examples of what that infrastructure could be?
Yeah. So imagine like our APIs will typically connect to, say, a client experience or a matter management platform within the firm itself, or a practice management platform, right? So imagine, well, go back to the tracking because that's a really easy one to connect. Is imagine, Citigroups, and you represent Citigroup, and they're involved in a new lawsuit, and we send that data over to your client experience platform, right? And so that attorney gets alerted, hey, Citigroup's involved in new litigation, and now you could click on Citigroup as an entity, and you can now see all kinds of analytics on Citigroup that can be produced from our data. Where is this litigation taking place? Who are the top firms representing Citigroup for this type of matter? What are the cases that we're working on within Citigroup? What are the cases that we're not working on with Citigroup? Any opportunity firms have to help educate their clients on issues that they're seeing in their industry, right? New trends that they're seeing in the industry. Maybe you represent Google, and one of the things that's been trending for a long time now is privacy lawsuits, right? And helping educate Google on, this is the amount of litigations taking place in the United States for privacy, and this is the trend, right? And you can help craft strategies for Citigroup to better address that type of litigation, which ultimately leads your firm to, picking up more of Google's business for privacy litigation.
So we've touched on the business development concept. I believe the concept of recruiting. I've seen that come up in some content around yours or your business, and so I'm just curious how your experiences, what you've experienced with respect to law firms taking that data and actually making actionable decisions toward their business.
Yeah, recruiting is a great use case. Besides outside the business, well, I would kind of put it in line with business development to a degree. So legal recruiting is kind of an important, business development tool for firms kind of looking to expand, their clients' roster, build different practice areas, open office and new locations, right? So think about how firms could take advantage of the growing availability of litigation data to kind of gain insight on which lateral hires, which practice areas to grow, and more importantly, which practice areas to avoid. So maybe to give you an idea of some of the questions that can be answered, looking for candidates using litigation data for recruiting is, for example, you could be looking at a candidate and say, what is the average caseload year over year, right? Had any increases or decreases in their case volumes, producing noticeable trends, right? Who are their top clients? That relationship's typically owned by an attorney or a set of attorneys, right? Who are their top clients, and are these clients that a firm would be interested in bringing on? And do they have any conflicts that would prevent them from working with those clients, right? And the conflicts can sometimes make or break a lateral move from one firm to the next. So finding out kind of early on, before discussions even begin with a candidate, could save a lot of headache in dealing with impossible conflicts of interest down the road. Maybe some like other things that kind of come to mind are for candidates, lateral hires, is have they moved from law firm to law firm? Do they move from law firm to law firm frequently, right? If so, have their top clients followed from one firm to the next? So that will kind of tell you how likely it is that those clients would maybe follow to your new firm, or if you brought that lateral hire and they move on, how likely they are to leave your firm, right? Do they have any specific specialties or specific practice area expertise that stand out? Do they handle run-of-the-mill cases or complex litigation? Are they a good fit for your firm's practice group? So I think it gives you a really good picture to determine whether an attorney can fit within your firm's vision and mission, and if they can add new profitable clients and practice areas to that firm. One last point I will hit on is like that's kind of come up in the past is oftentimes, especially in complex litigation, getting lateral hires who have been before judges or clerked before judges or done things where that firm typically does a lot of litigation, right, is important, right? So that you can look at things like, hey, what's their experience in this jurisdiction before these judges, right? Do they have any experience going up against, some high caliber, formidable opposing counsel? What milestones do they hit in litigation that would, be indicated of a profitable practice, right?
You've given a lot of good examples that hopefully have our listeners kind of connecting some dots there in relation to their own practice and how they can leverage that. I'd be curious to know, and this may be a tough ask, but if you were to prioritize 3 actionable steps that someone can take right now to uncover opportunities or maybe even diagnose weaknesses in their markets, what would those be? And I know that's a broad question, but is there anything you've learned over the years in being in this industry that you could point to that are tried and true?
Law firms are a little bit different than a lot of other industries, right? One of the things that we see lack, and even the largest firms, they're kind of building of their data infrastructure. And this would really be my point number one, is law firms in general, just due to their kind of partnership structure, tends to encourage this more short-term thinking, less vision on the long-term development of the firm, right? Meaning short-term profits over a long-term gain.
I would agree. Yeah.
And the other point is that because firms have to be owned by attorneys, they really access a lot of outside capital due to that. And so traditionally speaking, the law firm market has been very, capital starved compared to other industries. People tend to say, oh, attorneys are, phobic to technology. They don't want to learn new things. I actually quite disagree with that. I think the result of where law firms are today is a result of those two main points. And it has led to kind of like firms lacking the rest of major industries, legal in general, in terms of adaptation of technology and use of data. And so therefore, the initial step of a firm is law firms are no different than any other industry. Law firms will increasingly rely on data, both internal and external data, to power intelligence and business development, litigation strategy, important aspects of their business, right? Profitability. And so the sooner firms are willing to kind of make that leap to investing into that data infrastructure, right? And this requires resources and technology, the better off long-term they'll be to adapt to kind of where law is going, which is going to be very data-driven in the future. So that's one step. The second step is, once you kind of get this data into your, say, data infrastructure or data lake, then you can begin to create, various process flows to flow this data to different practice areas to, empower them with specific information. So now it's in your data lake. Next thing you can do is power to your matter management system or your practice management system, right? Or your client experience system, depending on what system a firm is using and how they're kind of pushing the rest of their internal data. Once you kind of get into those systems in that data lake, now you can begin to harness the power of the business development piece to that. So in review, invest in the data infrastructure and the resources required to get outside data into your firm. Invest in the internal platforms you need to be able to use this data. And third, develop the analytics and tools you need to be able to power some intelligence so that actual decision can be made from a firm perspective.
One question attorneys ask often is differentiators, and we've touched on this. I mean, we've touched on a lot of different ways that firms can ultimately differentiate themselves in utilizing data, but litigation data in particular, that's something I'd love to dig in a little bit further on. How is litigation data being leveraged? And maybe if you can give specific practice area examples, that would be useful to our listeners.
Yeah, perfect. So what we'll often see is firms create what we call a litigation strategy, right? And again, that's when they're taking their internal data they have in a firm, right? So they have things like billable hours they've done for this firm, the types of matters they've handled for this firm, right? And then they'll pull in a full data set on their client from, say, us using our APIs. So going back to the Citigroup example, now you pull the last 5 years of data for all the court cases that Citigroup was involved in across the United States. You pull that in your infrastructure. You map that with the stuff that you've handled versus the stuff that you haven't handled, right? And then you can begin to break down, even with more knowledge than Citigroup has, in terms of, hey, Citigroup. So when you're going to pitch Citigroup on, getting more of their business, you can break down for Citigroup, hey, here's all the litigation you've been involved in. Here's where you have it, right? Here's where we have offices, or willing to put offices, right? Here's the type of litigation that tends to cost you the most. Here's how we think we can streamline it, right? And here's like the team that we can build around it, knowing that kind of market intelligence you have about, how much the volume of litigation that you can expect if you were to earn that business, the rest of that business from Citigroup for causes of action or specific type of matters that they're involved in at a practice level. So it basically empowers firms to be able to have very intelligent conversations with their clients about and be able to come off to their clients knowing more about their clients' litigation than the clients know themselves at a very, 10,000 feet level.
That makes sense. Great example. Any other questions that you would have wished I would have asked around this concept?
We've been working on our kind of latest version of APIs, which are really remarkable. And I think maybe I could give you a little backdrop to this is, we kind of had this idea that, if we saw a lot of this legal data sitting out there and litigation data sitting out there, mainly behind paywalls, embedded in various applications, some of which were helpful for firms and some of which were not. But at any point, it didn't give firms the flexibility to use data in various ways that their practice areas need to know, right? Meaning a practice area has specific questions or specific things they want to know. And so, we kind of had this theory going back to 2016 that if we opened up, APIs, an ecosystem would develop for people wanting to consume legal data, innovate, and drive business off of that. And so, for the last, basically 2 years, we've been developing what's called our Apollo APIs, which are really kind of that next generation of APIs that not only include access to all this court data, but includes all kinds of other super valuable information, analytical data. So, for example, now firms can say, who are all the firms that this, client has ever retained, right? And have they retained them as, a defendant counsel or plaintiff counsel, right? They can see things like, hey, we're thinking about putting an office in this jurisdiction, and we have these practice areas, right? How much litigation actually takes place in those areas in the country, right? Versus maybe leveraging other areas in the country. So these Apollo APIs not only allow you to produce analytical legal analytics where you can pipe that aggregate data out, but they also produce things like venue information. So, does this jurisdiction produce mega verdicts, for example, compared to other jurisdictions, right? What are the demographics of this court? And so there's a lot of intelligence that you can now be pulled out through these new Apollo APIs. And basically, we've had a group of about 120 engineers working on this data pipeline of these APIs for almost 2 years, and we just launched it into alpha. And so it's very, very powerful, I think, with what firms could do with this. I think really probably the best thing to end with is just, I have found that investments in technology in the kind of long run pay really, really high returns. And legal, like I said earlier, is no different than other industries. And it increasingly is and will become more and more data driven. And, the need to make those investments should be now because, 5-10 years out, firms are already making these types of investments. In 5 or 10 years out, they're going to be really, really far ahead of everyone else for the folks that didn't.
I agree. I believe that the time is now to be harvesting and leveraging that data and making better informed business decisions. Josh, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking time to join us on the Lawson Podcast. For anyone interested in reaching out to you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, probably the best way is they can go to unicourt.com, unicourt.com, and just hit the contact us button. Just say you saw the Lawson Podcast and you'd like to learn more, and we can have somebody reach out and connect us.
Very good. Thanks for sharing your expertise.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on, Tanner. Again, big fan of your podcast, and have a great day.
Lawson by ConsultWebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next Lawson episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.